Welcome to A Time to Thrill. This is your host, Aime Austin. This is episode 21, and this month we're featuring an interview with visual artist Patricia Krebs. Let me do this one bit of promo because I usually forget. So, in 2022, which is now, Nicole Long and the new Nicole Long legal thriller series is being released. There are 4 titles in the series, and the first 2 are up on pre-order. Outcry Witness is up for 99 cents, and the first full-length book in the series, Major Crimes, is also up for pre-order. So if you haven't gotten them yet, some of you have because I've seen the numbers, but if you haven't yet pre-ordered those, now's the time. They'll be coming out in June of 2022, followed by the last 2 books in the series. Now, about Patricia Krebs. I am so excited to interview Patricia. Turns out that I met her, like a lot of these people, a lot of years ago. I hadn't realized she had relocated to Los Angeles so many years before. So Patricia was here. She was born and raised in Argentina. She was here for a number of years, and for the past 5, she's been back in Argentina. So let me just say this. I saw this movie, Sidewalls, a couple of months ago, and it was set in Buenos Aires, and I then probably became slightly obsessed with the city. I was told that people who like Budapest also like Buenos Aires, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds like my kind of place. So it has been added to my bucket list and moved way to the top. Hopefully, in the whole COVID world, I will be able to start visiting more places soon, and I can add it. And you'll hear, I think I was really good about not crushing too much on her city. So Patricia is a visual artist, and if you've ever seen an avatar I've used an avatar instead of my photo as an author for, oh my God, probably my entire career. I've had 2. She did the first one for me years ago, and as I aged, I decided to also update my avatar. And I love Patricia's work. I'm sitting in a room with her art on the walls here. Her art is in my bedroom. So I see it on a regular basis, obviously, in addition to the avatar that I use for social media. I think she has such a brilliant and unique perspective on the world that comes through her art so well. She's one of those artists, whenever I see her work, I get a feeling. And the feeling is ka-ching, let me buy it. But the other feeling is I can almost feel what she's trying to say. And we've never talked about it. I mean, the thing that I love most about this podcast is the ability to have longer conversations, because I've seen her usually at exhibits or picking up artwork, and the conversation's like 5-10 minutes, but not that long. So this is the first really long conversation we've had, outside of email. We have some of those. But I was really excited to find out, as you'll hear during the interview, that some of the feelings that her artwork evokes, I don't know if they were deliberate or it's just what she's feeling at the time, but it was exactly what I got from the work, which to me is sort of remarkable, as I'm a person who doesn't necessarily consider myself visual. I enjoy photography. I enjoy visual arts. I do not make them, for sure. And to me, it's easier to evoke feelings through words, obviously. So I'm always amazed at the ability to use visual media to convey a message. And I think Patricia Krebs does an awesome job at that. The paintings that we talk about are mentioned in the show notes. And I will also include a link to Cactus, which is the gallery that represents her here in the United States and in Los Angeles. I hope you'll enjoy the interview and the talk as much as I did. Without further ado, visual artist Patricia Krebs. Hi, welcome to A Time to Thrill. I'm Aime Austin. I'm so excited because this month we're going to talk to artist, I'll call him multimedia artist, Patricia Krebs. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Hi.
I'm so excited to talk to you because Well, okay, because many, many years ago, I don't know if you remember this. I remember I was driving to Malibu, that part I remember. And
Mhm.
I had seen you sent me an email and you had an avatar. And I was like, oh my God, can I have one? And you're like, yes. And so you sketched out, we talked about it. And I was getting out of my car and to go to this beach in Malibu for some reason. And it was back when the phones were little and the avatar popped up and I was just so thrilled. But I don't think I could email you back because there was no signal.
Right.
But it was really, I used it for years and then I just changed because I'm getting older and who am I kidding? So, but thank you. Everybody loves it. Like I can't tell you how much everybody loves your artwork. I get a lot of compliments all the time about it.
Oh, thank you. I loved working on that image because I remember you mentioning something that you liked about my work and um, about creating a face that you couldn't tell exactly where she was from,
Yes.
and that's one of my favorite things. So it was one of those great moments when somebody asks you to do what you really really want to do. So and yeah, so I really really enjoyed it.
Well, I thank you. So I have a copy here on my wall here, and then a copy here on my wall in the apartment in Budapest. So
Mhm.
I get to see it all the time. So I will say this to guests: I have a lot of your artwork in
Mhm.
this house and in the other one. So I wake up every day with one of my favorite your works in my bedroom, and then in the living room, and then actually one here in the dining room where I'm sitting and recording now. So I have a lot of questions for you because I've never asked you any of these. So I think I met you. I'm going to say this. I was thinking about this morning, maybe like 16 or 17 years ago. Elizabeth Decker, who is another artist, um, had a show. It was a joint show at the Cactus Gallery. I want to say it was four women. I only remember
Mhm.
you two. And I think it was like 2004, 2005, something like that.
Okay.
Um, do you
Probably
remember?
2006 because I think that that's when I started working with Cactus.
Okay.
I mean, showing my work there was
Mhm.
probably 2006, yeah, or later than that.
My biggest regret from that show is I didn't buy any artwork. So you had these four. I can't believe I'm thinking about this. You had these. I want to say this series. I mean, there were probably many things there, but it was
Hmm.
a series of four. I want to say smaller paintings, and one of them was a woman with red hair. And when you looked really close, you could see little faces in her hair. And
Yes.
I love that. Like I still to this day love it. I regret not buying it because when I went back, it was gone. But or had the red dot. But I was really, really like that. And so the next time there was a show, I was like, okay, this time I'm not gonna be stupid. and, um, and that's how it started. But I have so many questions for you. So are you from Buenos Aires?
I am. I was raised here, like I grew up in Buenos Aires, but
Hmm.
I was born in a different part of the country, so closer to Chile.
Hmm.
It's a province called San Luis, like Saint
Okay.
Louis, but in
Right.
Spanish. But
Yeah.
I lived there for only a year, and then my parents moved to Buenos Aires. So I'm pretty much from here.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. I have not thought a lot about Buenos Aires in life. I mean, I think about places and that I want to travel, but I recently saw this movie called Sidewalls, which is random. And it was set in Buenos Aires. And I was talking to a friend, and he was like, people who like Budapest also like Buenos Aires. And I was like, is that a thing?
Uh
And then the next day he texted me, he's like, so do you want to go? I'm like, absolutely. like,
huh.
I was like, it was the most amazing visuals in the movie. And I was like, how come I never thought about it? I can't say. I mean, the world is big. But how
Yes.
long? I know you were here for a number of years. How long have you been back?
Well, I was in LA for close to 15 years, and
Hmm.
then I've been back for 6 years now.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yes.
It doesn't,
Time flies.
in my head, it's like 2 years. Obviously, with the pandemic,
Yes.
maybe three, six. Wow. I didn't realize it was so. Okay. That's okay. I'm going to
Yes.
have to
20
recalibrate.
2015. Yeah, 2015 I came back. That was the
Okay.
year.
Okay. So, well, I have like 1,000 questions, but how did you end up in LA?
Okay, so how did I end up in LA? I was like about 21 when
Hmm.
I met my boyfriend at the time. I was
Hmm.
singing in a band and he was the drummer, and I was he already had the idea of going to LA, and I didn't. want to know anything about it. Like it was the last place on earth for me.
Okay.
Going to the US was a no.
Mhm.
And but then at the same time, we were like together for many years, like actually like 3-4 more years.
Mhm.
and and at the same time I was trying to find ways to get a job as an artist,
Mhm.
which was very difficult. um and it was sort of like things happened. I always say that big decisions don't happen for one reason. It's like many reasons sort of coming together.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, this relationship was getting serious. I couldn't make any money as an artist. There was no way for us, like, to have enough to move together. And I was still living with my parents. So at some point, after a couple of years considering it sort of hit me like, okay, if you don't do this now, when are you going to do it? Like, now it's
Right.
the time.
Right.
And so I was super scared of just thinking about it. But yeah, that was my thinking. Like, okay, let's do it. If not now, then yeah.
That's how I think that's how a lot of us end up out here. I mean, my story is not dissimilar. At some point, you're like, well, okay, if we're just gonna do it, then let's go. Like let's just
Yeah.
commit and go. And I'm still here, so I can't say anything
No,
about
the funny thing is, like,
it.
yeah, like it is important because I do take a long time to making decisions. Once I make them, I'm fine. But
Mhm.
I'm not impulsive with this type of thing.
Right.
So it took me a long time. and but then uh but I not only I don't regret it, I really appreciate having gone there. And
Mhm.
it wasn't easy, but I did it. So
So the entire time you're here, okay, my recollection of your time here is that you were always both doing music and art, visual art. Is
hmm
that the case, or
yes,
okay?
yeah, because I did uh mostly freelance work.
Hmm.
And so working freelance, it's like maybe you have this job or this gig for this month, and then next
Right.
month is a different thing.
Hmm.
So I was able to do both things, music and visual arts, and interesting stuff that I never thought I would do, like singing voiceovers for movies, or even playing. I had a gig for years playing percussion for a DJ. I'm not a
Wow.
percussionist. I'm not a professional percussionist, but I have rhythm.
Hmm.
So so I guess the good thing about LA is that it's the the show business, the entertainment, the arts that relate to this business. You get to do, or you have the chance to do a lot of different things.
True. That's true.
Yeah. So yes. The only problem with the music, I was thinking about this today actually. I had stage fright for a long time.
Wow. Okay.
So I started having the chance of singing in restaurants.
Hmm.
Um and and I was, again, like, it was it was painful, like, physically. So I had to overcome that, with practice. And when you have to make a living, you have to do these things.
Right.
you
It's
know
so true.
so when I just got to LA, I was in a maintenance company, like a cleaning crew. That was
Hmm.
my first job. We were
Wow.
cleaning movie sets,
Hmm.
and barely making money for rent. and
Right.
and then at some point, somebody offered, they needed a sub singer for a restaurant in Burbank called Picanha, a
Okay.
Brazilian restaurant. And I know Brazilian music, and I know how to sing it, and I couldn't say no. I was going to make singing Fridays and Saturdays, the same amount of money than cleaning every day. And it
Wow.
was
Yes.
and then that was the reason why I went there, so I couldn't say no. But I did suffer. I suffer uh, for a while until I kind of got used to it. But I don't feel so comfortable on stage,
Okay.
so I did a lot more studio work.
Ah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did with music.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to go back. So when did you start? Well, it depends. When did you start, I guess, drawing and painting and all of those things?
Oh, I think I started drawing as soon as I could probably pick up a pencil.
Hmm.
I've it was my refuge, like always. I've
Right.
always drawn. Yeah. I was very shy and introvert, and so I would be drawing all day from when I
Wow.
was very little. So yeah.
As a parent, that seems like an ideal situation. My child does not have anything to keep him busy all day. And so, did you do formal training?
I actually mm, let's see. I started formal training when I started what we call high school, which is
Hmm.
actually I think like well, pretty much when we finish elementary school, so 8th grade.
Right.
So at that age, at 13,
Hmm.
I went to a fine arts school,
Wow. Okay.
because I already knew that it was either that or music. Like I already knew this,
Hmm.
and before that, my parents took the advice of a teacher who saw me drawing when I was very young, and I mean very little, like 6 years old, and this teacher told them not to send me to formal training for a few years,
Okay.
like to let me do my own thing before
Hmm.
somebody taught me anything more technical.
Okay.
And so I did go to a place which is sort of like a it's sort of like a school of art, but it's very non-competitive, and you could do a lot of things like drama, music, dance, visual arts, literature, all these things for children. So I
Okay.
was going to elementary school in the morning and then going to this place in the afternoon, but it wasn't technical. It was more like expression and
That sounds
so that
ideal.
kind
That
of thing.
sounds like actually really, really good advice. It's
Yeah.
it's actually advice I think somebody, a friend of mine, got for her daughter regarding piano, and they were like, "Can you
Mm-hmm.
just let her play for a
Yeah.
while before you get into like scales and bore her to death with some of
Yes.
these other things, but let her do the expression part." And I thought it was such interesting advice and counterintuitive to a lot of the other advice and training other people I know have received.
Yes, and I try to do that. I'm an arts teacher, so
Hmm.
and sometimes I have very young students who struggle. I mean, they literally suffer. They should be having fun because
Hmm.
they are too hard on themselves, and with technical stuff. And I try to give them some space to experiment and have fun, and because I mean, if you like art and you like drawing, it should be fun.
I know
And
it should be a joy. I
yeah,
think.
especially, I mean, you're not a professional, so you don't have to worry about that right now. And so I try to do that. And at the same time, give them some different tools. But it's hard. I think it's hard also with, today is so different than when I was younger.
Mhm.
You have so many tutorials and stuff, and people showing you, very fancy techniques.
Okay.
And so sometimes I think, it's kind of hard on kids. Like
Mm.
on one hand, you have a lot of information available, and at the same time, um,
Maybe too much. Maybe too
maybe too
much.
much. Maybe too
I
much.
I wonder about that in a lot of aspects, as opposed for people having like thinking of a creative solution as opposed to like Googling the most expedient way to do something.
Hmm.
But it also is what it is. Like I can't change it back.
Yes.
My child I think is the same age as the iPad, and he has no recollection of life without that kind of thing and being able to like ask Siri for an answer, and it's just
Right.
so different than how I grew up. But there's
Yes, it is different. You we certainly, I guess, I really appreciate technology in
Hmm.
all its forms,
Right.
but I think the and especially being a teacher, uh,
Hmm.
there is a problem with patience, and the frustration of having to practice until you get it. That there is
Right.
no faster way. I keep telling this to my students, and I sound like a crazy old woman, but I know that this is the truth. You have to practice, and there's nothing that can shorten that
That
process.
period. No, I
Yeah.
sometimes wish there were, but there isn't. So I think about it daily. I think, well, wouldn't it be great if I could just be the writer already I want to be? But there's no way to get
Right.
through it, but to get through it. And so I just get up
Yes.
and do it. What, so what prompted you? So much of the work that I have is mixed media. So
Hmm.
what prompted you to move into the kind of artistic expression that you have? Have you always done, like, mixed media? Have you or not? Or how did you start?
Yes, I think that's a great question.
Mhm,
I don't think anybody has asked me why mixed media, but it's getting me to think. Yes, the thing is, I didn't grow up with money or resources, and much of it's not like I am. And there's certainly people who who
mhm,
have a worse, you know, who are poorer than me, but
right,
there was something that had to do with the way I grew up, and then being in LA. Also, I was for a while I was struggling even just to pay rent.
mhm,
So I used whatever, always used whatever it is that I could find, and then those materials would give me different ideas.
mhm,
So I use it, um, also as a way of as a part in the creative process, but it
mhm.
comes from just being used to using whatever I can find.
Do
Really.
you gather materials? Because I'm just thinking, so in the apartment in Budapest above, you would not see this because you were not there, but above in the living room, there's large windows. So there's like a thin space in the living room, and there's a very a round painting, but it involves, like, I don't know if it's a tree branch or some kind of, I'm not going to be
Hmm.
good with this, some kind of plant matter. Let me say that
Yes.
because I had
Yeah.
to pack it and ship it, so that I'm very cognizant of. But are you gathering materials generally often, and
Yes.
then okay, so yes, and then
Yes, and then it's yeah, and then it's funny because now this reminds me of an. Of course, I found about this much later, but my parents, whenever they had to throw something away,
Mhm.
they would have to do it in hiding, because if I knew they were throwing it away, I would want to, save it for some art or some craft or something.
Right.
So yes, I guess I always, I don't know why. I'm not really sure why,
Mhm.
but uh, I find something inspiring in different materials, and I kind of feel like, well, when I was little, nobody talked about recycling, but I
Mhm.
guess I would feel bad, if there's something like a cute, I don't know, cardboard box. Like,
Right.
why would you throw it away? You can do something with it. And yeah, so yes, I do gather, and that was one of my problems when I decided to move from here to LA, and then from LA here. I had to give a lot of trash away.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Yes.
I know, because there's I know, there are some limitations to what you can carry internationally, let me just
Oh,
say
of course. Of course. Yes. And I'm always thinking, because I plan a lot more than what I can do. I have ideas for series of works that still haven't had the time
Mhm.
to start actually putting together, but I do save different types of material for different projects that I have in my mind. So at some point I have to, when it's been like, okay, 5 years and I haven't done anything with this, perhaps it's time to let it go.
Oh, this is so
Uh,
interesting. I'm starting to feel really grateful because my friends and I, so one of the things that people ask authors all the time is whether or not we have, like, sufficient ideas. And I think, oh, I have ideas, but I don't have his time. And so,
yes.
and it's distracting, to be frank, ideas. So I just write them down in notebooks, and I just have a lot of notebooks with a lot of ideas
Mm-hmm.
that I might get
Mm-hmm.
to in my lifetime or not. I'm not sure.
Yes.
But there's no lack of ideas. The time to execute takes so long. I'm just like,
Yes.
I'm so envious of people who are able to create faster than I do, to be frank. But
Yes. But it's funny because usually people, I mean, they ask me like, what do I do for inspiration? I don't have to do anything for inspiration. I have way too much. Like, if anything, it's sometimes I try to work faster. I get impatient just because I want to get these ideas really out of my head
right.
and start with the next thing. But yes, the problem is that I don't have the physical time to do everything, so I have to make a decision. But yeah, now inspiration is not a problem.
So can I ask you, how do you catalog ideas? Because one of the problems I have, and many authors I know have this, is the new ideas are very distracting and they're very attractive, mainly
Mhm.
because they don't require any work because they're in your head.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I have a whole mechanism of like, well, I have special notebooks where I write down the ideas just to get them out of my head. Because what
Mhm.
I have found is that if I don't rein in that enthusiasm, I'll have written 3 chapters of a book that is nowhere related to anything I need to do.
Mhm.
And I'm better. I only have a few strays now, but I'm really better at stopping that thought, writing down whatever it is, and then really trying to refocus. But that took years to be better at that.
Mhm.
How do you focus on the series, the thing that you are completing, as opposed to the all we call the new shiny ideas out there that are
Yes.
sparkly
No,
and
no.
delightful?
I totally understand what you're talking about because the my I think my favorite part of the whole process whenever
Mhm.
I'm creating whatever it is that I'm doing is that excitement when I'm starting.
It's so
So
great.
that's yeah, that's my favorite part. And then it's like it's just okay, well, now I have to do the work and finish, which takes of course a long time, and by then, like you're saying, I'm already thinking about other ideas because this one, so the surprise is gone. It's
Right,
like I
exactly.
already know where I'm going, and but I do have to finish it. So it's hard, and it depends on a lot of times. It really depends on if I'm usually doing either commission work or I'm hired to do a book or something, and because I'm responsible and this is my
Right,
job,
exactly.
I know that okay, if I need to work on this, then I need to work on this, and everything else can wait. But I usually have 2 or 3 things that I've already started and
Mhm.
that I can like slowly work on, in my breaks. Like right now, I started working on a new book, and then perhaps in the middle of the day, I need to take a short break. And it's not like I'm going to go and take a nap because I can't do it.
Right.
So I would take, I don't know, one of my sculptures that I'm just doing for me, for myself, for fun, and do a little bit. And then I feel like I'm still kind of playing, that
Okay.
that sort of fun of doing something, and that it really has no, how can I say it, it's not like I'm preparing a show or I have to deliver some work to somebody. It's
Right.
just for me. But then, like you said, like I do have a lot of ideas that I do write them down. I write a lot, actually. I
Yeah.
find that writing helps me get stuff out of my head.
Yes. It's how I do
Yes.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I don't think I'd be able to focus. I mean, well, that's
Yes.
me. I have the inability to focus would be great. So how but that's I so I do have friends who do that. Like I had a friend who wrote one thing in the morning and one in the afternoon, or a friend who worked on her like fun thing at night, whether it's
Right.
witches or fairies or whatever. And then the real like money making thing during the day.
Mhm.
I have never been able to do that. I like the idea of it, but I have a limited amount of creativity daily, so I need to apply it to the thing that pays the bills, rather
Yes.
than the thing that I want. I
Yeah.
wish I had more, but I don't have that. I have a couple hours a day, and then I have to go do something else. In the last years, okay, I feel like so the last um, piece I bought from you is pen and ink. Or no, it's a pen, ink, and watercolor. I want to say that. And then
Mhm.
I had to because I ran out of space. So I had to stop. But what, and so I try not to open the emails. I really try very hard. Um, what in my experience of you, and this may not be all of it, you have shifted. So a lot of the work that I have from years ago is very bright and colorful and festive. And the work from the last few years feels more pensive and thoughtful. Is
Hmm.
that the case, or is that just my perception based on what I have?
No, no, it's absolutely possible. And it would make a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, definitely. I think, well, the thing with the last few years, I would have to consider two things. Like, one is, whatever happened in my personal life, which
Mhm.
of course affects my art.
Right.
And then at the same time, it affected the fact that I moved to Buenos Aires and I'm shipping art to LA.
Right.
It made me also change the some of the medium, and to
Oh.
make it easier to ship. And
Mhm.
so those two things. But yes, it's possible that in the last few years, no, it's not possible, that's the reality of it. Yes, yes, definitely something has um changed. I mean, I live on my own.
Mhm.
I moved on my own for the first time. Let me think, 4 years ago, and I was 41, and that
Mhm.
was the first time I was living by myself.
Wow. Yes.
It was kind of like a tough time. Again, like something that needed to be done, but it was tough. And that's when I painted the Furies.
Mhm. Yes, I
So
have the
it was
favorite.
kind of like a dark and sad and angry time. And yes,
I
and it
think it
slowly got a bit better, but yeah, it's possible that had a bit to do with it.
that's so interesting because maybe it spoke to me because that's at the time I think I got separated. So I think I bought
Hmm.
a thing at that time. I remember because I know you're talking about the shipping because I remember I could roll it up and I was able to bring
Hmm.
it
Right.
all with me to Hungary without it being super burdensome.
Yes.
And they do open the art, and there's a lot of things, but I worked on shipping art better. But it's just, so you do find that your personal life affects your art? Because I was under the false impression that it would not. I'm not sure if it did. I can't say this. I'd actually have to ask
Hmm.
readers because in my head, I feel like art is the place of refuge, and therefore that's where I can go do the creative thing and not have to think about life. And
Hmm.
then when I get back, I'm like, oh, I gotta
Yes.
deal with
Go
life.
back to your life. Yes.
Mhm. But
No, but I think it's maybe both. But I mean, I know that there is no possible way that my life doesn't affect my art, just
mhm,
because the art is an extension of me. I think even if I don't really think about it, I'm sure that that's what happens. But
mhm,
perhaps it's not so obvious because I do have, as you know, certain subjects or themes and things
mhm,
that I'm interested on, that are more social, or even, they have to do with people, but they don't have to they are not directly related to my own life.
right,
And so it's sort of like my message in a way.
mhm, right,
But I also know that even, when I create from whatever it is happening to me, and I uh, it also really helps me go, like, process some of my stuff.
mm,
My works are not about me. Like, my
right,
whole point is that the audience feels like they are about them
right, mhm,
so maybe that's why, like, even if it is, how do you say it, like, auto-referential or
yes,
self-referential, I don't know what. Yeah,
self-referential, yes,
self-referential,
mhm,
um in a way. But then at the same time, I try not to make it all about me. And then the part is something that happens when I'm working, even when I start with something very personal.
mhm,
For instance, the last show that I did, Another Body,
mhm,
was in my head, sort of started like this, something that came out from a very personal place. But then the pandemic happened,
right,
and then the whole series took a turn.
Right.
And so it was about all of us. And so
Hmm.
and I'm kind of hoping that that happens. I think it has to happen at some point. It has to not be about me.
Right.
So yeah.
Do you think that the earlier work was more about you and then later it becomes less? Because I think we have this sort of theory with, well, novelists, I don't know about other writers, where the first book we always say it's like autobiographical. But
Hmm.
then, like 20 books later, you're like, I mean, nobody, well, not nobody, but most of us don't have a sufficient amount of life experience to fill that many
Right.
pages. So it becomes less about us and more about whatever it is that people have themes
Hmm.
about, like life or love or
Hmm.
found family. I mean, there's a lot of things. Have you found that the themes maybe have broadened as time has gone on?
Yes, I think possibly has to do with maturity in
Mhm.
general.
Right.
Like when you're sometimes I have some you know teenage students, and I see them and everything is so dramatic for them, and you're looking at
Yes.
it and you're like, really, that's not a big problem if you know
I
what a big
know.
problem is. But you experience life with that level of passion when you're younger, so I
Right.
guess you are sort of self-absorbed in
Mhm.
your own experience of things, and it's
Right.
natural. And
Right.
then perhaps as we grow up, we get to see things from a I don't know, a different point of view, or knowing that, okay, what happens to me also happens to a lot of other people. That I
Mhm.
think that's kind of my point with my art right now. It's like to 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 connect from that place, to because it happens to me as a reader, for instance, or as an audience. But I can read a book and feel like it was written for me,
Right.
and I like that. It's a great connection because
Right.
it makes you feel like you're not alone.
Yes.
And so I'm kind of hoping that that happens. And as we, I guess, you know that comes with maturity as well, like understanding that, hey, we all have, okay, very different lives, and at the same time our problems may not be so different, and our experiences may have something in common. And
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's interesting because that's what I read books for. I read books because I'm like, okay, I'm not alone. But I also do, I'm very much into photographic exhibits, and that's something I get from photographic exhibits. Even when the
Hmm.
subject is solitary, I think, okay, but we're not alone. Like you're having this solitary experience, but I'm also having a solitary experience, but I'm not
Yes.
the only one. But that's something when I do go to shows. I was at LACMA last week, and that's that sense. You're like, oh, I had the same thought, so I'm not alone. I'm not just sitting
Yes.
here being crazy in my head.
Yeah.
Like I feel that life is much more of a shared experience than
Yes.
sometimes it would seem.
Yeah, and I think that art is a good excuse to sort of start that type of I don't know, connection or conversation, because
Mhm.
we get to meet a lot of people, but we don't have very deep, interesting conversations with most of them. So I
Right.
think that art is sort of like an excuse to shortcut to the interesting part of somebody, instead of having a boring typical conversation.
Right.
You go to something that's interesting.
No, I think that's
um
so true. I think that's so very true because you're right. Like one of the things it's one of the reasons I started the podcast because I know a lot of people, but there are not a lot of opportunities like at an art show or at dinner or
mhm.
even that to have like a longer, deeper conversation. But I have so many questions and such curiosity about all of the people I know, but there's not never, but there is not as many opportunities to have those conversations, but art does
Yeah.
shortcut those. That's certainly true. Like every time I look at something or I share art with somebody, it becomes like a gateway to a deeper conversation about whatever.
Exactly. Yes.
Mhm.
Even with people you don't know. Like I remember being at gallery openings and having very deep, interesting conversations with people that I don't know, just because we were standing in front of a painting and they asked me something and I said something. And then all of a sudden we are talking about even taboo stuff, like stuff
Right.
that people don't want to talk about.
Mhm.
So I
No.
really do that. That's what I like when I talk to people. This is what I like.
Mhm.
I don't like the boring conversation.
No, it's what I enjoy as well. And I'm thinking about, because I went to there was a curated exhibit I went to this summer that was photographs taken during the pandemic. They every year they have these photography exhibitions, but obviously 2020 was a little different in terms of
Yes.
the kind of street photography and what people did. And it sparked, like, after the curator talked about the different artists and the things, it did spark a conversation with people I don't know that it was deeper
Hmm.
than normally I would have had with people I don't know, just randomly
Yes.
and at a gallery. But it was actually an amazing experience, because it was the first time I think I'd actually talked about the pandemic without outside
Right.
of like the four people I talked to regularly about it.
And yes, and the pandemic I did something that is remarkable, because this is something that happened to everyone.
Right.
I have friends in LA that have family in the Philippines, or friends in Australia, and I have other friends in Europe who have family, somewhere else, and this is everywhere.
Right.
So there is no way you talk to people and the pandemic doesn't show up in the conversation.
No, it's actually the biggest, I guess, communal experience that we as humans have had in a long time. Um,
Hmm.
that is not war or something like that, but it's a very
Yeah.
um, grand communal experience. And I don't know, well, who knows? None of us will know what the effect will be or the long term sort of sense of that. But it has certainly changed. It's changed all our lives in many ways,
Hmm.
many, many ways. So I do want to ask. So now, what are you working on now? I guess
Well, as in like work
for
um
well, in terms of, okay, are you?
or
Let me
anything. Okay.
write this down. Are
'Cause
you still engaging in music? Are you still doing music?
not right now, actually. No, that's an interesting question. I started recording some of my own songs when I first moved on my own,
Hmm.
and they are very sad, but they are beautiful. I do love them. They are sort of like blues in a way,
Hmm.
but and I started that, and then at some point I had to put some of my most of my energy into being able to get my shit together, pay rent, feel
Right.
at least like feel I wanted to feel like like I I had this,
Mhm,
because it was um uh I was doing a bit of freelance work, but it wasn't very steady and I was nervous, so at some point I took a job teaching at a school.
mhm,
And so and it was good. I organized my life in a way,
mhm,
but I do feel like I have abandoned my songs and I need to go back to them. And before the pandemic, I joined a band. It was a lot of fun, actually, because it was like New Orleans type of
oh,
blues
right, yes.
jazz, really
Mhm,
fun with a lot of musicians. And but then I don't know, it's that it was a lot of people, which
mhm,
makes things sometimes difficult. And
right.
then with the pandemic, like anything that involved playing live
Yes.
was over.
Mhm,
So right now music is, yeah, I'm not sure what's gonna happen or when,
mhm.
but it will happen. I know that, because yeah, I feel music a lot. And actually, maybe, I was thinking when I was telling you about the stage fright, and
Mhm,
sometimes I had long periods of not doing music or not singing particularly.
right.
And but I realized music affects me emotionally a
Mhm.
lot, so a lot more than any of the other things that I do.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, so sometimes I'm more selective with, like, okay, maybe this is not the right time for this, like I don't want to steer this right now. And um but yeah, I started working on a children's book with Alva Sachs, with whom I did, this is our seventh book together.
I
So
know, wow, okay, yeah.
yeah, so that's very exciting. I'm in the first stages of like planning the book, so that's fun.
Mhm,
And then I started working on a series of sculptures when the pandemic started.
right.
um, and it was actually, creatively, it was wonderful. that time. So it's particularly the beginning of last year,
Right.
because I I had the time, and I was, as a teacher, I was working from home,
Right.
so I could, um, I started thinking about, what haven't I done for a while, and I always loved sculpture, and the problem, sculpture is hard to, it's difficult to make, and then it's difficult to ship, and then it's difficult to sell
No,
because it's difficult to display. So
yeah, I often wonder about that because I think I have, you sent me once a tiny piece and I have it in Budapest,
hmm
but sculpture, I love the idea of sculpture. And I remember as a kid, people having them, but the
hmm
dust itself is its own
oh yeah.
issue, especially if it's intricate in any way or involves yarn or like paper mache or anything where dust,
Oh yeah,
gets in.
that's me. That's my stuff. I have, like, yeah, feathers. I mean, forget it. It's a mess. Yeah.
And I don't, outside of museums, I'm always like, I love the idea of sculpture, but really practically, how does
hmm
one keep it and display it and keep it clean rather than having everything in a hermetically sealed box?
Right.
So it's just something I wonder about. I enjoy, but I don't know. Actually, what I've decided is that perhaps it doesn't have to last forever. You know what I'm saying? So then I can back away from that a little bit. Are you, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that, well, maybe this is my perception. How much computer work are you doing? Like, how much drawing and creating on the computer are you doing as opposed to painting? Actually, canvas or paper or whatever.
Yeah. No, I work a lot on the computer. I'm a Photoshop addict. I know that's a brand. I shouldn't name it, but I am. Yeah, I started drawing with the computer since I don't know, probably like over 20 years ago. I don't know.
Oh wow! Okay.
And yeah, and I like it. I like doing like digital collage and
Mhm.
taking advantage of what you can do in the computer.
Right.
And it's a nice break. Like, if sometimes if I am working too much on paper or on something like real tangible, then
hmm
it's nice to go to the computer. And then if I'm doing a lot of computer work, then it's nice to go back to paper.
hmm
And I feel like they complement each other really
Right.
good. Like, one is feeding the other.
hmm
So I did actually last year. I illustrated. No, let me think. It's so hard with it. I feel like we had a 20-month year.
I know. I know. I
When was
know.
this? Wait, no, beginning of this year actually.
Okay.
I did illustrations that were totally digital
hmm
for a super cute book that is, I mean, it's already finished, but I haven't got my copy. The author is in LA,
Okay.
and the book is titled "I'm Not a Scaredy Cat."
hmm
And I loved it because I fear is one of my favorite subjects, and to make a book for very young kids about fears, I thought that was awesome.
hmm
And it's not about fears; it's about bravery.
Right. Yes. The other side.
And yeah, and I did those illustrations, all in the computer,
hmm
and it's a lot of fun too. It allows me to, um, what's the word that I'm thinking? Experiment without being afraid. Like, okay, I'm gonna make a mistake, and then how to fix it. Like, okay, hit undo, and
Right.
no problem.
That's actually true. That's actually one of the things that became the most freeing about digital photography. I fought digital photography for a long time and carried film around through a lot of airports,
Mm,
but I realized that I had greater freedom because it wasn't so critical because I wasn't going to run out of film. And once
yes.
I was like, oh, well, maybe there's freedom here. I prefer dark rooms over Photoshop, to be frank, but I can't have
hmm
everything. But the freedom to then, oh, well, I'll just take these pictures. It's something I normally wouldn't do, but it's free, and
hmm
so I'll do that. And so there is a greater freedom in having the ability to undo and not have to be wedded to every single thing that you create. So
Yes.
I will say that there is great enjoyment in that. One of the other questions I have, and I've always wondered this, I've never thought to ask your work is very, I want to say, diverse. So there are women, a lot of women, there are men obviously in the pictures, but there are a lot of women that are like, well, I want to say, in my sense, many colors, like, from like black to white or whatever. What is it that influenced that? Because they're, well, in my experience of art, that is not something, it's not that inclusive in the body of work particularly.
Yes. Well, I guess, it's funny because I'm white, as people would put it. It's such I hate the way that we refer to things, but the thing is, I find certain, I don't know what's faces, certain types, I don't know, colors, skin colors and hair colors and types of hair, and I love darker skin. I've always have. I'm not sure why exactly, but I love black eyes and hair that goes up, and I like these things, and I find them really, really beautiful. And I think at the same time, I was probably very much aware of what discrimination means. This is, I don't know, it was something that it was probably talked at home when I was little, and and you see people, I don't know, doing things or taking something for granted, like and sometimes I see it with very stupid stuff, like my dog is white. Literally, he's literally white. And I noticed that people react to this big white dog very differently than if the dog was completely black. And you can see this. I think I was always able to notice, and it bothered me. Like, why is this type better than this other? Like, I don't get it. If this other is so beautiful, like, what's wrong with you? So so it has to do with what I find beautiful, which is, it may not have a particular reason, and it, I think it also, I try to make a point, like that, like what, because one of the things that I try to do with the images, of course I want to create something that I find beautiful first. It has to be beautiful for me first, but then if it's intriguing enough, then I want that to be an excuse for the audience to think about something, or to reflect, or or wonder about something. So, but the first, so I could tell you is those two things. There's a very conscious idea, and at the same time I find that beautiful.
Okay. And then I have this other question. So the painting that I have in my bedroom, at some point I remember you sending me a postcard. This is so random because it was chosen for, and I don't know what at the time the city may have called it Hispanic Heritage Month or Latino Heritage Month. They don't.
The Latino Heritage Month. Yeah.
Right. And so how was that painting chosen for that? I don't even remember what year it was. It was past 2005, that I know. So, but that's all I could think of.
Yes, it was 2009.
Okay.
And that one, actually, I have to tell you, it's still one of my favorite paintings.
It's one of mine too. But I have it here, so I can enjoy it quite well.
Yes. Yes. There was something quite, joyful, and I don't know. It sort of came out right from the beginning. It was like, I don't know, but yeah, how it got chosen, I guess. Well, the Latino Heritage Month, from the LA city government, it's been happening every year. I've submitted my work for this publication that they have every single year, and they always select something. And so that year, I have, this was one of the images that I submitted, and so from all the artists and all the images, they select something for the cover of this publication. And I guess somebody, I don't know who, decided to use these for the invitation, and I was thrilled. But yeah, I guess that's how they do it.
Okay. It was cool. It was the one I was like, what? Look at what just happened.
Yeah. Yes.
That's really delightful. The other question I have is, so looking at some of the work that I have now, not well, the Furies also, but
Hmm.
is more, I want to say, political in nature. And one of the
Hmm.
things, so in my head, you have, other than the joyful thing we were just talking about, there's like sort of two works. There's ones that are a little bit more contemplative, and then ones that seem a little bit more political. So
Hmm.
like the one I'm sitting here looking at the dining room, there's a woman, a black woman standing behind I don't want to call it a puppet because it's not really good, a shell of a man.
Oh, a
Um,
mask.
yes. And
Yes.
they are speaking to this crowd of
Oh,
cheering
yes.
men. And actually I just sent it to somebody yesterday because we were talking about behind the women behind the men. But
Hmm.
what, for those kinds of things, were you being very deliberate in in your message, I guess is what I want to say.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes. I think that, you know, politics affect all our lives.
Right.
So we can't we can't feel like, okay, we don't care, or at least I can't. I
Mhm.
can't feel like I don't care. Oh, okay, this is not my thing. I'm not interested. Well, because it really affects my life,
Right.
and I feel like that everything is political one way
Mhm.
or another.
Right.
So sometimes, yeah, sometimes I feel more this need of saying something that I consider that is really important. Usually something that has to do with oppression, because that's one of my main concerns. And oppression is like, it goes like from gender, race, poverty, religion,
Right.
ideology, age, I mean, whatever.
Right.
So it's everywhere. It's terrible.
Mhm.
It's a terrible thing. So sometimes I use my art more like a refuge, and I get to do, yeah, some images that are more maybe contemplative, or just beautiful. And
Right.
sometimes I have this feeling like, okay, let's stir things up a little bit,
Mhm.
because hey, this is happening. So
Right. And I was going to ask you, so since you moved, are you selling work there as well? I mean, are you doing gallery shows and work in Argentina as well as here?
no. And one of the reasons why is because, you know, the there's not, how can I say this? um, I'm sorry if I get stuck, but sometimes, language
Right. I understand.
gets in the way. But no, I mean, it's not so common that people would buy art. I mean, normally, like in LA,
Mhm.
um, it's not so easy to sell art. I know a lot of visual artists here, who have even, like, more experience, and they are even older than me, and they keep telling me, like, how lucky I am that I can sell my art.
Right.
And it's quite sad, because it has to do with culture. It's a cultural thing. Like, people don't consume, let's just call it that way.
Yes.
People don't consume art, and so that's kind of sad.
Mhm.
But I was, this series of sculptures that I started at the beginning of the pandemic, my goal was to, when this is over,
Right.
who knows when that's going
I
to
know.
be.
Honestly, I know.
I want to do a show with this works here, and it will be my first show in Buenos Aires after more than 20 years.
Right.
But I'm going to do it, like, probably without thinking about, selling or not. Like, I got
Mhm.
rid of that idea. I decided, like, I'm just gonna do it to do it, and we'll see what happens. But there's really not such a market for, maybe there is a market for, more expensive and, famous
Yes, of course. Yeah,
artists, and
yes.
but not on my level, not at the cactus level.
So okay, Cactus Gallery is the gallery where that represents you here. And
Yes.
I haven't talked to Sandra in a while. I haven't think about that. But what in the let me say this: when you look back at the work that you've created, do you see one or two themes that in retrospect that jump out more than were in your head when you were creating them?
Sort of like a uh, that they stand out, you mean, in the
Yes.
body of work?
Yes, the body of work,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, I think yeah, something that has to do with uh, connection or
Mhm.
disconnection. Either one, yeah, the connection, the human connection, I guess. Um, and I usually I feel like this is it's like oppression, or or maybe, yeah, human connection.
Mhm.
It's also like it's such a wide
That's true.
um idea, but that's pretty much my concern. It's like I
Mhm.
feel like I'm concerned actually about human connection. I think about this a lot, all the time. I read books about it. I'm interested in psychology, and not to study, but like I'm interested in like the things that why we do the things we do.
Oh my god.
And
Do you know
yeah.
that? Yeah. It's the biggest question I have in my life. I think I get up every morning, and the thing I wonder most about humans is why people do the things they do. I have no other questions about people. I just want to know why. Like, I have
Yeah.
so many questions, and it's the one question that maybe I can't answer for everyone, but it's the people's motivations and
Yeah.
actions fascinate me, and I just want to know more.
Yes. Yeah. And it's never ending. Like just that theme is,
Mhm.
you could have many lifetimes creating work and it would never be over, because there is so much like um again, like oppression is just one part of like I guess human behavior
Mhm.
would be the theme. And then um whatever excuse I can find to talk about this,
Okay.
then it will be great. It will be welcomed. Yes.
No, I don't. I don't. I think I agree 100%. Lately it's something I think about all the time. Just why? Why? Tell me why. Just I
Yeah.
want to know
And
why.
yeah, and actually I was gonna tell you the it's kind of weird to talk about visual arts without seeing it, but my series of sculptures, actually they are all these different characters, very diverse, again, very
Mhm.
different, but the one thing in common, it's like they have their hearts in different places.
Right.
Like one of them has the heart, on a hand, and another one has the heart in the stomach,
Mhm.
and another one has the heart in the head. And I keep thinking about these like metaphors of how we feel things. Like I feel like there is a problem with, we are probably not giving emotions enough space
Yes, I think yeah.
in our lives.
Mhm.
So, and I think that creates a lot of other problems.
I think so. I think it's the basis for a lot of them. People being, I don't know, unwilling or unable to express emotions as they come, and so they hold them in,
Mhm.
or sublimate them or push them down, and then they do come up later, and it's a matter of how.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of systemic. If I taught in schools, I have a problem with formal education, but um but at the same time it's necessary. And I realize how little space for individuality there
Hmm.
is
Right.
in school.
Hmm.
And then once you're out of school, you're already formed
Yes,
that
that's
way.
right.
so yeah, this is one of the things that I think concerns me the most. Yeah. And I'm
Wow.
very emotional. That's not good or bad. It's just the way it is. But I really, I am very emotional.
So, how old is your dog? You got a dog when you moved.
Yes. I got, actually, my dog is right now 5 years old.
Right.
He was 1 year old when I moved by myself, and he
Mhm.
actually pretty much saved my life. I was very depressed, and
Mhm.
he was the one cheering me up every day.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's 5.
Is he a
And
husky or no?
he's a Malamute,
A Malamute,
Alaskan. Yeah,
Alaskan Malamute. It
it's
seems like a
pretty much the
very
same but
yeah.
bigger.
I know it seems like a very large dog. For
He
for
is.
I is are there okay. In most cities I have lived in, it turns out to be many more smaller dogs than larger dogs.
Hmm.
Do you have one of the largest dogs?
Yeah, actually, yes, yes. A lot of
Okay.
people have very tiny, tiny dogs
Hmm.
in the city.
Right.
That's the trend,
Hmm.
and I always liked big dogs. I had a dog in LA
Hmm.
for 12 years and a half,
Hmm.
and he wasn't that big, but he was still a big dog. And then when the dog died, and I got my citizenship,
Hmm.
and that was the time when I left.
Right.
That was the right time. Okay, I'm done here. Bye
Right.
bye LA.
Hmm.
And then when I was here, I wanted to get another dog, and well, they gave me this dog as a present, and he was small. I mean, he looked like he was going to be big, but I had no idea how big he would be.
Right.
And he pretty much weighs the same that I weight, so he's a big dog.
No,
But I love big dogs. I can't consider having something small
I've actually never
as
had a small dog either, but so I've
yeah.
always grown up with big dogs. But well, I mean, I do go outside and I see small dogs, and I always think, I don't know. I mean, I've never had one, so I
Yeah.
don't know what it's like. But when I grew up, my parents had like shepherds and like Rottweilers and very big dogs,
Right.
so
Yeah.
no tiny dogs, even though we lived in New York City. It's
Oh, in
interesting.
New York. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. No,
um,
I love big dogs, and I also, I really appreciate having him because he's like my personal trainer. I get up
mhm,
every morning and we go
right,
for a long walk, like an hour and a half every
right.
day. So, so, and it was the same with my dog in LA. We would go for walks, and that's my workout. I don't enjoy working out, but I do
Mhm.
need to. So I enjoy having somebody taking me for a walk every day.
Do you find the dog walks? I used to find them. I don't have a dog. I left the dog when I left my marriage. But one of the things that I miss is I found it inspirational because I had to
Mhm.
go out, twice a day, and we were out for like
Mhm.
an hour or more every day. And so it was the one time of day I had to think about not much other than like keeping the dog on in line. But other than that, it was really the time when I spent the most time thinking about the project I was working on.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's exactly it. I really I think, looking back, and sometimes I can remember exactly where I was walking with my dog in LA or here when I got this idea or this reflection or I
Mhm.
understood this or I had um so it's a time that I really, really need because I can think clearly. And sometimes I think the best ideas come when I'm walking,
Right.
either when I'm walking or when I'm sleeping. But yeah, because I would wake up and write it down because
Mhm.
they come like that. And I dream a lot and I remember my dreams, and sometimes they send me great ideas, so I have to get up and write it down because I know I'm gonna forget.
Yes, that's the worst part, the forgetting. Sometimes
Yes.
I wake up and I used to not write things down because it would wake me up. And then I would wake up in the morning and think, "Oh, it was so brilliant at 3:30," but now not so much. So actually now I do get up and
Right.
I do write everything. I keep a notebook next to the bed and I do write them down because there are good ideas that I don't seem to have during the day. Probably because my brain is empty of a lot of other things and it can be
Yes.
filled with ideas as opposed to the practical things of driving the car or going to the grocery store. Um, but
Yeah,
it
that's what I love about walking. Like, you don't really have to think about walking.
right.
So
That's true. It's one of the
I don't
it
like driving. I hate driving, actually. It stresses me out. So yeah.
I find it stressful, but I'm still here, so I have to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up driving. I mean, we had a car, but we didn't drive often. It was like a weekend thing, and then I moved here, and I guess the one thing I underestimated was driving. I thought, well, I can drive a car, and what difference will it be? And I clearly, like, I
Yeah.
just got that wrong. I just got it wrong. I was just like, oh, this is different than taking the car out on the weekend to go to Long Island. It's not quite the same as,
Yeah.
practically using it every day, but it's one of the things I have accepted in order to live here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't miss driving every day.
No. Actually, oh, we could have a whole conversation about that, but no. Driving is definitely not for me. I think I don't know if it has to do with maturity or not, but there are certain parts of myself that I remember struggling a lot and fighting a lot, like with myself, like why can't I do this if everybody else is doing it? I guess lately I've been sort of like making peace with how I am,
Yes.
and accepting that certain things don't come naturally for me, and I don't need to push them. And
Yes.
some things I have to push. I mean, there is, you have to, but if I don't have to, then I really, there's no point, and I'm gonna suffer, and what for?
Right.
So no driving.
No, I think that's the greatest thing about getting older is I realize there's some things I don't have to do. I'm never going to do. I have no interest in doing, and I can let it go. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm never going to do that. And it's okay. It's not for me. And life goes on. So I do more of the things that I enjoy, less of the things that I don't enjoy. And the letting go has been delightful.
Yes. Yeah. And it's unavoidable because we do, I personally, I feel like I don't have the same amount of energy. And so I have to choose carefully where I'm going to put my energy. I remember pulling, all-nighters before a gallery show. I can't do that anymore. I know I can't. So I have to get my 8 hours of sleep. And then next day I'm going to continue working, but I just can't do. I did it for a long time, but now I don't do it anymore. So.
No, there's so many things I don't do, and it's like people are like, I'm like, it's okay. I'm gonna get up in the morning and I'm gonna go to bed at 9:30, and it's all okay.
Right.
Like I no longer have to do it. My window of work is very short, and I just need to focus on that, and everything else it's got to go. And I don't miss it, and it's actually fine. It's the freedom of aging. I'll say that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, thank you so much for talking to me. I'm so thrilled that I get to talk to you.
Me too. And no, thank you for letting me have this conversation. It's been so interesting. I feel like we could keep talking for hours, but I really love having the opportunity of speaking about this stuff. It's really nice. So thank you.
Yes. And so I will say this. So for those of you, because this is such a visual thing, and I did interview a different visual artist earlier, I will include copies of at least some of the pictures I have. I don't have them all in the show notes so that you can get a certain idea. And I certainly will link to your website, which has a lot, as well as I saw I was looking for you today. I was like, oh, I think Sandra has you on Pinterest. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. But I will certainly link to those so you can have an opportunity to experience Patricia Krebs' art as I do on a regular basis. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Oh, thank you. I hope we get to talk again soon.
Yes. And I vow one day when I'm going to fly in a couple of weeks, but when it's a little bit more open, I do want to go to Buenos Aires more than anything.
Okay. You're welcome to come visit the tiny studio.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. This has been A Time to Thrill with me, your host, author Aime Austin. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll share, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. It will help others to find and listen to my conversations with brilliant creators. Also, please hit the subscribe button on your podcast app. In addition to hosting this podcast, I'm also the author of the Casey Court series of legal thrillers. They're available wherever books are sold, your local library, and also an audiobook. You can follow me on Instagram at ThrillerPod, find me on Facebook at Casey Court Series or A Time to Thrill. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with you soon with more great conversations.